On May 1st, 1971, Amtrak was formed to relieve the suffering railroads of their passenger operations by taking over most of them, while the ones that Amtrak didn't take over were either discontinued for good or sold to other operators. By this time, Amtrak was using very old and outdated locomotives that barely looked like they could run another mile, so they bought new locomotives, and those in particular, well, let's just say they loved to kill. They eventually got newer locomotives over time, and yeah, you get the idea. In 1977, Amtrak wanted to create a train specifically for the purpose of serving high priority and very rich business companies like car manufacturers, gas companies, and other types of huge businesses. Most of these companies at the time were in the mid-Atlantic region of the United States, so states like Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, and New York. With that, Amtrak decided to contact the at the time known as the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the state of Maryland to see if they could allow them to run a train through Maryland, Pennsylvania, and Washington, D.C. They agreed to supply the funding for the train, and thus, the Chesapeake was born, running from Philly to D.C. The Chesapeake was an early Amtrak intercity train that went from Philly to D.C., as I said earlier. Service began on May 1, 1978, with funding from the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and the state of Maryland. A demonstration trip ran from Philly to Bowie on April 30th. BWI Rail Station was added to the service when it opened in October of 1980. From February 4, 1980 to October 5, 1981, the Chesapeake was extended from 30th Street to Suburban Station. The train primarily served higher-ranking business executives and government officials on the southbound trip in the morning, as it arrived too late for most civil servants. The northbound trip primarily served the latter group, as it departed too early to serve the morning riders for their return trip. The Chesapeake was also a daily train, numbered 420 going northbound and 421 going southbound. It made 16 stops, including both its termini, which are Philadelphia Suburban Station, Philadelphia 30th Street, Chester, Wilmington French Street, Newark, Delaware, Elkton, Perryville, Aberdeen, Edgewood, Baltimore Penn Station, Edmondson, Baltimore Airport, Odenton, Bowie, Capitol Beltway, and Washington, D.C., with a total distance of 134 miles covered in 2 hours and 20 minutes of travel time. Elkton was one of the stops, and it hadn't seen service since 1967. The Chesapeake really stood out as a train because it was the only train to ever use leased equipment from NJ DOT. Here's what I mean. In 1974, General Electric produced 70 Aero 2 cars in the Mary Pair format, classes MA-1G. These cars were built in General Electric's Erie shops with car shells from Avco. The Aero 2s were numbered 534 to 603. They were purchased specifically to replace the ancient PRR MP54s, which were very slowly phased out of New Jersey service in very late 1977. The Aero 2s were constructed following the production of SEPTA's single-unit Silverliner 4s, but prior to the Mary Pair Silverliner 4 units. In service, the Aero 2s were frequently leased to Amtrak for off-hour clocker trains. From June 1978 to the summer of '79, the Aero 2s were leased to MARC, or simply known as MARC, or Maryland Area Regional Commuter, where they bumped in the last operating MP54s from service. From late 1979 till 1982, the Aero 2s were loaned to Amtrak and were used for Silverliner, now Keystone service, and off-peak clockers. Around this time, while Amtrak was using them, they were their main source of power for the Chesapeake. Amtrak basically used these trains so they didn't have to run those dinky old PRR MP54s, as they were already over 60 years old at the time. They wanted something new and modern, and something that wouldn't break down in 5 seconds or constantly derail like most of their early locomotives. Because the Aero 2s were literally just commuter cars, there weren't really any special accommodations to the Chesapeake, so all it was just unreserved coach class, which kinda added some practicality since you don't have to rush to order a random seat, and you could just choose a random one. They did at least have bathrooms though. On January 1st, 1983, Conrail was relieved of its obligation to run commuter service. Commuter service in Pennsylvania was merged into SEPTA Regional Rail, and MDOT contracted with Amtrak to run other Washington to Baltimore commuter trips. The Chesapeake was therefore discontinued on October 30th, 1983, and replaced by an unnamed Washington to Baltimore train. Today, in 2024, commuter rail service is now provided over the former route of the Chesapeake, except the segment between Perryville and Newark, by the SEPTA Newark Line and MARC Penn Line. That is, for now. The Maryland Transit Administration has current plans to extend the Penn Line to the Newark station in Delaware via a revived Elkton station to connect with the Wilmington Line of SEPTA, or even further north to 30th Street Station in Philadelphia, opening up the rest of the former Chesapeake route. The MTA funds, and no, not the New York City MTA, the Maryland one, the MTA funds a local bus connection between Newark and Baltimore with the transfer at Elkton. Representative Edward Ostiensky and Senator Stephanie Hansen co-sponsored a resolution to the Delaware General Assembly that would add commuter rail service between Newark and Perryville, involving an extension of MARC service to connect with SEPTA at Newark and provide an alternate to Amtrak for Delaware residents wanting to travel to Baltimore or D.C. This resolution would be introduced into the Delaware General Assembly in 2021. Longer-term plans include construction of new track and extending the line past Washington Union Station to Lenford Plaza Station and into Northern Virginia. The Purple Line light rail, which is under construction as of 2022, will connect to all three MARC lines. The transfer to the Penn Line will be at New Carrollton. The Chesapeake was one odd train, especially since it was very short-lived, with service only lasting 5.5 years. It's kinda cool that they used some equipment from New Jersey Transit of all railroads, but they practically had no other option because every other option was either too old or had constant troubles. Nonetheless, it was still a pretty neat train. It's cool that most of its former route is still used today by not one, not two, but three railroads, which are Amtrak, MARC, and SEPTA, which sometimes doesn't happen with former routes, especially short-lived ones. Thanks for watching another Forgotten Railway Stories video. Remember to like and subscribe for more future content coming your way. Thanks for watching everyone and have a great day. Peace.